You know, right now at the Sweet 16, I look at a lot of these great coaches and who I trust in these kind of do-or-die games. I trust Krzyzewski. I trust Boeheim, but he's up against Krzyzewski with far inferior talent, so he's in trouble. I certainly trust Jay Wright. I trust Calipari. I trust to a certain degree, although they lost a lot of bad games in the past. You know, last year he did a good job. I got to think that few has an advantage over Leonard Hamilton. I trust I trust Beeline of Michigan. Those are Huggins is a good coach, but I don't like him in this matchup. Painter is a good coach, but I don't know how to read him now with all these injuries and everything else, with losing his best player. So the coaches, Brownwell, I like, but I don't say I trust Self. I trust Krzyzewski, Self, Beeline, and Calipari. And because of that, those are the four I think you're going to see in the Final Four, which in the end of the day is still, a one seed, Jay Wright and Krzyzewski, and then Beeline and Calipari. That's still, a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 5. I mean, that's not the worst thing when you consider all the 1s and the 2s and the 3s that we've already lost. Carolina, Virginia, Michigan State. But if you get that, that is not bad. And that is what they need. I don't trust Bruce Snyder there. I don't trust Bruce Weber there at Kansas State. I don't trust Hamilton at Florida State. I don't trust. A lot of these guys have been in this spot for the first time. I don't know what to make of Chris Beard at Texas Tech. Kennedy's at A&M. They've done a nice job. I don't quite know what to make out of him either. There's a couple of guys that Musselman's done a good job with his team. Fortunate twice. So, I like, I don't know what to make of Mosier, the head coach there at Loyola of Chicago. But I would think right now Kentucky, Michigan, and that's the game that, of course, TBS and the NCAA and the basketball TV gods would want, and Duke Villanova. That's the best you can come up with as far as the Final Four is concerned. Kentucky, Michigan, first game. Duke Villanova, the second game, is a listen. Now, Kentucky, Michigan are not the powerhouse teams that they have been, especially Kentucky, but out of the teams left on that side of the bracket, if they get that, they're okay. Anything else, they're in trouble. All right, Kansas State, Loyola, Nevada, Florida State, Gonzaga, A&M, any other combination, even if it's against one of those two teams, is a rough watch. They need Kentucky, Michigan in a worse way. Now, Duke, Villanova, again, I would be surprised if you don't get that. I don't think Purdue can beat Villanova with the injury. I think Villanova will beat West Virginia. They're used to West Virginia. They've played West Virginia. He obviously has coached against Huggins many a time. I don't think that Villanova will have a trouble against West Virginia. So I think they're going to win that game. Duke, maybe Kansas would be an issue. We'll have to wait and see on that. Kansas, I didn't see the Kansas-Seton Hall game this week. Kansas against Penn, I watched. I couldn't get much of a read on it. I think Kansas will beat Clemson. Kansas-Duke will be a good game. You'd have to like Duke with all those pros. But if they get Duke-Villanova on April 1st at 9 o'clock at night, that's a big night for college. That's a good, I don't care if the game's on the moon or if Howard's television is covering it. People are going to watch that game. Duke Villanova is a well-watched game. The other side of the bracket is in trouble if they don't get Kentucky, Michigan. The other side of the bracket. And now, there's a million empty seats for these games. There's a lot of empty seats. Part of it is the team leaves. North Carolina's fans bailed out last night. Part of it is the team's fans leave. Part of it's the expense. Part of it's sitting there for 2 straight games. The empty seats are a problem for these games. They're really a problem for these games. They have to be somewhat concerned about. And, with a lot of neutral site games, you can sometimes, I thought the Michigan-Houston game Saturday night had no juice whatsoever in Wichita. None. After Kansas had won and every fan had left, the Michigan-Houston game, although it turned out to be a good finish, and the kid missed the 2 free throws, which cost Houston a game. That game was nothing was going on in that game. Nothing. When you don't have the crowd there, it's a major problem. And the UMBC Kansas State game was an atrocious game. I know there were some fans that liked rooted for UMBC against Kansas State, but that was an unwatchable game. I thought the Butler Purdue game was an unwatchable game in Michigan, in Detroit. Unwatchable. Unwatchable. No one threw. Crowd was dead. I had a lot of trouble getting into that game. A lot of trouble. They put these teams at neutral sites. A lot of the times they put these schools. And again, Purdue and Butler's not that far from Detroit, but they put them at neutral sites, and then they expect everybody to get all revved up at them. They don't know who the players are. They don't know that much about the team. It's very, very, very difficult. Now, I have not seen the ratings. Again, the ratings are difficult now to ascertain because they're all going to spin it, and we learned it from the Winter Olympics with the streaming and all the devices that NBC likes to use. The ratings that I think about are the people sitting in front of a TV set watching the games. That to me is still the majority of the fan base watching the game. I don't know that many people on a Sunday afternoon are watching the game on a phone. I mean, I'm not. I might be following the game on a phone with the scores, but I'm not watching the game on my phone. I'm not watching the game on the computer. I'm watching the game, on my couch on television. That's where I'm watching the game. That's how I'm doing it as a sports fan. That's how I'm doing it. And again, the game times this weekend, they're going to put Duke late and they're going to put Kentucky late because the average fan is going to go watch Duke and Kentucky play, and they're going to watch that game late. So that is how they're going to handle this from a television perspective. And if you look at that, Duke and Kentucky, Duke will play 9:37 on Friday night. That's the late game. And Kentucky will play 9:37 on Thursday night. That is the late game. So they're going to bury these other games. Although they have to put, obviously, Florida State Gonzaga late Thursday, too. So that is the latest game, but that's in L.A. So they need to play that game at 7:07 local time, and that's why Kentucky's in Atlanta. They can't play it that late. And Duke is in Omaha, so Duke is going to play, say, ahead of the Kansas. And Kansas is going to be early in Omaha. Duke is going to be late. In Boston, they're going to put, I'm surprised, they're putting Villanova early in Boston, and they're going to put Purdue late. That surprises me a little bit. I thought they put Villanova late and put Purdue early, and they go the exact opposite there. But the tournament is, it's funny about the tournament. You want a lot of juice in that first round. But the essence of the tournament, until you get to the Final Four, is a lot of games in a small window, where you can maneuver a little bit and you can pick the game you want to watch and go to it and then see the last 5 minutes of every game. That is what you want in these tournaments. That's how I like it. And you don't get that now with the way it's set up television-wise. You do not get that, which is too bad. You get it where, Saturday afternoon, think about it for a minute. Saturday afternoon, if you put your TV set on at noon, all right, you had standalone games for 6 hours and 15 minutes. Until you got to the first game, that Kentucky started at 5:15. You had the two games earlier than that, 12:10 and 2:20, or 2:30, with Duke and Villanova. And then you had Kentucky at 5:15. You had three standalone, basically you had 2.5. You had 2.5 games of standalone action. That's rough. And the same thing yesterday. That is rough. That is very, very difficult. And I'm telling you right now, I'll say it again. How in the world can you sit there, in my eyes, how could you sit there and play Marshall at 10 o'clock at night? I know it's on the West Coast in San Diego. You start an NCAA tournament game on a Sunday night at 10 o'clock, you're asking for huge trouble. 11 after the hour, we continue. Moving along well on this Monday. I'm Mad Dog Unleashed.